Welcome to Undercurrents of Romance, the show that celebrates every subgenre of romantic fiction. In each episode, I peel back the layers of your favorite love stories and chat with the talented authors who bring them to life. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn. Now, let's dive in with today's guest. Hello, romantics. I'm here with New York Times bestselling author Jayne Ann Krentz, appearing as her alter ego, Jayne Castle, to talk about her new paranormal romantic suspense, It Takes a Psychic. Welcome to the show, Jayne.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, me too. Me too. Absolutely. Well, first off, congratulations on this lovely book hitting the New York Times bestseller list. Amazing.
Yeah, I was pretty excited, I have to admit. There's,
I
that's
bet.
that's a thrill. That is a thrill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I often wonder because, you have a lot of books and many of them have been bestsellers and it's probably a silly question, but does it ever get old? Is it always a thrill every single time?
Now, it's always stressful because you don't
Yeah.
know how well the next book will do. You just
Yeah.
don't know. So there's a certain amount of, well, there is a lot of stress involved. And then once it's out and in the world, you can relax. It'll do what it has to do.
Yeah.
It's a very crowded marketplace in the book world. As anybody who browses for books knows, there's,
Yeah.
yeah, and I fully understand why readers get what they call siloed. They read narrowly along a certain, maybe a fictional lens. Maybe they only like mysteries that are cozies, for
Yes.
example, or, have very specific kinds of romance or very specific kinds of fantasy that they enjoy, and
Hmm.
stick with it because
Yeah.
it's it's not only daunting to try and pick something new that you might enjoy.
Hmm.
Mistakes are expensive because books are pricey. So I totally get the silo thing, but that's one of the things you're facing when you go out with the marketing of a book is who's going to find it?
Yes.
Where will they
Yes.
find it?
I remember the days before Kindle Unlimited, and you would go into a bookstore, and this was me every Friday night I go into a bookstore and I would look at the new releases and I would make my selections every Friday, and it was kind of like the old Blockbuster days where you go in there Friday night too and pick your selections. And it was just a neat thing. But now, like you say, there's just so many options to choose from.
Yeah, there are. And
Which,
in those days, what happened was the bookseller essentially curated the list for you.
yeah, true,
You wouldn't
true.
even have been aware of books that weren't in the store, really, unless you went to another store and it had a different kind of connection. But it was just a smaller marketplace in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah. Which I guess has its own kind of pros and cons to have things curated for you, I suppose. But
That's why everybody loves lists.
yeah,
Everybody wants to give me a list of books that say, put me in this mood. Give me a list of books
yes,
that mood. They read.
yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I do too.
Yeah. Well, did you ever think your blue-eyed, fascinator-wearing, prone to violence dust bunnies would be so popular with your readers?
By the time this is book 18 in the series, so yes, by this
Yeah.
time I know that people are buying these books 100% for the dust
Yeah.
bunnies. It's like
Yeah.
not for my clever plots, not for my in-depth characterization or my incredible world building. This is all about the dust bunnies. It's sort of like becoming the cat lady or something. Um,
Yeah.
there's an old saying in the theater world that you never want to go on after kids and dogs. And I would add to that dust bunnies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm slightly embarrassed to say that I've been a Jayne Ann Krentz fan for many, many years, and Amanda Quick as well. But this was my first foray into Jayne Castle, and I have to say I wasn't quite sure about the whole dust bunny thing, but now I understand. I understand
Another
why
one down.
readers love them so much. Yeah, absolutely,
Well,
absolutely.
they're like that perfect combination of your favorite dog, your favorite cat, your favorite goldfish.
Yeah. And now we have emotional support husbands too.
No, they're
Well,
fun. they're fun to write, but they have
Yeah.
taken over my Jayne Castle world. There's no question about it. Um, and I'm not surprised that this is your first foray into it because I get that all the time. A
Mm,
lot of people don't read me as Amanda Quick because they don't like historicals, or they don't read me as Jayne Ann Krentz because they prefer historicals.
yeah.
And not everybody wants the futuristic world building. So this is actually a time for me to do my
Yeah. Go for it.
public service announcement here. If you're an aspiring writer out there, do not go with multiple pen names. Save yourself. Go back. This is not smart. Um,
Yeah.
I ended up with it for pretty much because I'd managed to kill off one of the other careers in terms of poor sales,
Yeah.
and had to reinvent myself. But unless you're facing some dire disaster like that, I do not recommend it. And the simple reason is because in this world, you just can't successfully or easily promote three different names. People will not
It's tough.
remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's tough. Yeah.
pick
Yeah,
one
I
and
was kind of curious if I did my homework correctly. It looks like all three of your pen names are published by Berkeley. Did I
currently,
see
yeah,
that correctly?
uh-huh,
Currently? Okay.
yeah.
I was curious if at some point they would allow you just to be Jayne Ann Krentz, because there are a lot of authors out there nowadays. Yes,
They, they
exactly.
they do put both names on the book. That's
Yeah.
that's a desperate effort to try and let
Yeah.
people know because even though there is a lovely little bio in the back with
Right.
all three names, nobody remembers. So
Yeah, so you think that the folks who read your Dust Bunny book, they just know you as I'm sorry, as Jayne Castle, that they don't think of you as Jayne Ann Krentz, or do you think that they're
it,
putting this on the books enough now that they're slowly transitioning folks to Jayne Ann Krentz?
yeah, I think people who read me as Jayne Ann Krentz are more or less aware of the other worlds. If they don't read the other worlds, it's probably because of the fictional landscape, because my voice is my voice. If you like my
Yeah.
characters, my kinds of plots, my kind of romantic suspense in one world, theoretically, you should enjoy it in the other worlds. But one thing I have learned over the years is the importance of the fictional landscape. And for a lot of
Hmm.
people, the futuristic is a step too far. It's just
Mm.
not the world they want to go into. Other people love it and they are not interested in the historical landscape. It's
Yeah.
very personal. And if you think about it, it's true of all the genres. Um, if you look at the mystery genre, for example, there's that kind of Sherlock Holmes landscape. We all know what
Mm.
it's like to move into 19th century London with the fog and the horse-drawn carriages. That's a very popular landscape. The 1920s has become a popular landscape for mysteries. And so I actually did a series in the 30s, and the appeal of that pre-war landscape for a lot of readers is not nostalgia. It's that you can do a story that doesn't require a lot of forensic evidence, a lot of DNA,
Right.
a lot of
Yes.
high tech.
Yeah.
You get to write the
Yeah.
classic amateur sleuth,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
people love that story. So they don't tend to, so that crowd doesn't tend to read modern serial killers, and
Hmm.
vice versa. So um, fictional landscapes are important, and the futuristic is not that futuristic. Because I basically posited a modern day level of technology, except on another planet using a different source of power, psychic energy.
Right. Do you want to talk a little bit about, I thought you did a wonderful, it was very helpful to me, as I said, as a first-time Jayne Castle reader, where you talked about this world and how it got separated from Earth. And do you want to talk about that a little bit or?
Sure. The setting is a planet called Harmony, and it starts with, we're looking at it, the stories of the descendants of the original colonists who landed about 200 years ago. And they were able to make the trip from Earth because of something called the energy curtain, which made interstellar travel possible. and they arrived on Harmony with all the good stuff, their high-tech stuff and their fashions and their uh, art and everything else that they needed. And then they could fly back and forth to the home world or jet back, or take rockets, whatever, however
Yeah,
you
right.
describe interstellar travel, um, back to the home world to visit family and friends. And then, bingo, 200 years ago, mysteriously, the energy curtain collapsed and everybody was cut off. And what I used that for was because that allowed me to take the very high-tech technology that had gotten them to the planet and reduce it back to a much earlier state because they could no longer get the supplies they needed to keep the computers
Yeah,
running or anything
yeah,
else. And at the same time, they were adapting to the heavy paranormal currents in the atmosphere of the planet. And that was heightening the latent psychic side of human beings. In
right.
my world, that's just a step beyond intuition. Um, so all that said, the level of technology is about equal today, so it feels familiar, but the twist is that it's run by psychic energy,
Yeah, yeah,
paranormal
yeah.
forces. Yeah. And this is probably, oh, chatty, get the
No,
hooks
it's
in me.
good. Yeah, it's great.
But this is a chance for me to say that those people who do love paranormal should be aware of that. Even though I get classified as a paranormal romance writer, I don't really write what you may think of as paranormal because I don't do the supernatural.
Yeah, yeah,
So don't read my books looking for vampires or werewolves or witches or magic because I work with the psychic vibe. And
yeah.
I like that
Right.
because to me it feels just one step beyond intuition. Everybody's got some
Yeah.
kind of intuition.
Yeah, I struggled introducing the book as a paranormal book because of that exact, because that's kind of what's in my head too. I wanted to say, well, is it mystic? No, that's not quite
Oh, no.
right. And it was, psychic is already in the title, else I might have said psychic or, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I understand kind of where you're coming from there, but I felt like those psychic elements to the story were really subtle in a way. I mean, they're there, and even terms like rezzing, that your characters are rezzing different objects and things like that. I was like, is that a Jayne term, or well, if I looked it up in a dictionary, would it be there? So I wanted to ask you about that, but yeah, it felt subtle, but there also, and it did feel like you were in this world to some extent, you know what I mean? Into our present world, but just there's additional elements here. So yeah, I liked the world a lot. I
Oh,
enjoyed hanging out in Harmony.
thank you. I hope you'll be back. Yeah, I think the trick is, all fiction is fantasy.
Hmm.
People may say a realistic blah blah blah, but that's bull. It came out of your head, it's fantasy of one kind or another,
Yeah,
even if it's just your reimagining of what you think of as reality. But I think to make it work, the emotions have to feel real.
yeah,
As long as the emotions feel real, the world is the reader's going to be able to step into it the same way your characters do.
yeah,
So on Harmony, everybody takes the psychic vibe for granted. Therefore, the characters take it for granted. And I think that's what makes it easier for the reader to take it for granted. Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, that worked.
Well, what I thought was really interesting too is that each individual has different levels of psychic power too, and that can create um, interest. I'm trying to be careful of spoilers here, but
Yeah,
that can create interesting dynamics between their relationships with other people because there's a certain amount of fear if you have,
certain kinds of talent.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if you're able to kill somebody with your psychic talent, nobody's really going to want to marry you. It's not.
Right, 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 right.
Um, so I keep the average level of psychic powers at a moderate level, but there's always monsters out there,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
power is power, and it's a question of how it's used. It doesn't have a moral. aspect to it, it gets used when bad for
Yeah.
good or bad. Humans make that decision. And then that's where I get the story plot from. And I always think of, even, right here on Earth, your greatest talent is often your biggest problem. The
Mm,
dark side and the light side to everybody's talent. Everybody's got one of some
true.
kind. Everybody's got a passion, but there's always a price, and
Hmm.
nothing is purely positive or purely negative. And I think that's where I get the characterization from. The psychic thing allows you to play with that.
Yeah. I wish I would have marked the actual chapter number because I I want folks who haven't read your Jayne Castle to read this book, if for nothing else, for the scene when they are in the tunnel and the dust bunny brings them a present.
Oh,
I'm not going to say what the present was, but that actually had me laughing out loud. So
oh,
it was an old world item, and yeah, it was so funny. So yeah, there's a lot of it's the story's imbued with some it's suspenseful elements, obviously, but there's a lot of fun in here too, and I really sense that you had fun writing this, and you had mentioned that a little bit earlier that this is something you enjoy writing. Are you pretty much writing like one Jayne Ann Krentz and one Jayne Castle book a year, or are you flip-flopping them from year to year?
occurring right now at one each. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all
Um,
right.
I haven't decided what to do with the Amanda Quick world. Still,
Curious
I've
about that
always
one.
reserved that name for the historicals, but I've done the historical settings, the 19th century. I've done the 1930s,
Yeah.
the Victorian era. I'm not sure where I want to go next. So,
Yeah. I was kind of curious if we would be seeing more Amanda Quick in the future, but now that we've talked about a lot of the world building and things like that, maybe you could just give us a real quick overview of It Takes a Psychic and what it's about.
well, this is this is the story of a couple of people who find themselves at a high class reception one night. Each thinks the other is a antiquities thief. So there's kind of a basic misunderstanding right from the start. Um, and then there's a dead body, and then there's a police raid. And our characters end up fleeing together to escape the police raid. It ends up, the fallout results in her losing her job at the university. He thinks she's stolen the antiquities after. And then they find out that somebody is out to kill him and somebody's out to grab her. And the question is
Hmm.
why? And it's because of their past, the secrets in their past. Um, they're both holding secrets. So they wind up being forced to work together on a road trip to the mountains, to a small town in the mountains. They have to work together because they can't trust anybody else. At least they have some understanding of each other. They might be thieves, but at least they know that much about themselves, and they can't trust anyone else. So they work together to basically survive and solve the mystery. And the little town is in the hands of
Yeah,
a
yeah.
cult leader who was supposed to have died 100 years ago. So
Yeah,
I keep kind of working in there from that.
yeah. Anytime you have a cult enter the picture, it's always a lot of fun
Yeah, I think
play with that.
they're popular from a fictional standpoint because
Right.
it limits your pool of suspects.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's a very tight, closed community of whatever, and there's been a murder. So how do you find it in that tight, closed community um, when nobody wants to expose the secrets of the cult? So yeah,
Yeah.
people love cult
Yeah.
stories.
Well, let's talk about Oliver. He's your sexy museum director. I loved how you gave him the ability to blend into the crowd as one of his talents. Yet, is it Leona? Is that how you
She,
pronounce it?
yeah, Leona.
Leona, yeah. She could still see him, and so I always love that whenever an author I don't know what the right term is, but whenever they there's this.
It suggests a level of sudden intimacy.
There you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's only them, right? And I think that they both, whenever they were at that gala, they both noticed each other in different ways, and so there was this instantaneous, almost like, oh, stranger danger, but also, ooh, stranger danger, kind of thing.
An
Yeah.
awareness, a deep awareness
Yes.
of each other
Yeah.
that goes beyond the surface. Yeah. And his talent was all about, he theoretically should be the perfect thief because he can just melt into the crowd and you never see him coming.
Yeah.
And she, being a antiquities expert, is very opposed to antiquities thieves. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
lots of building conflict. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it reminded me. I think it was Linda Howard who said something like, "If you're going to have a arsonist, you better have a firefighter," kind of thing. You have that built-in conflict. So I thought that was that was great.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Because that's what
So
people need for
yeah,
that emotional excitement, the
yeah,
excitement, conflict. And they read for a resolution that is satisfying, not just because this crime gets solved and the two people fall in love, not just because of that, but because underlying values, core values are affirmed. Justice gets done. True love and a belief in the healing power of love wins out. Um, Good over evil. It's really elemental stuff at the heart of fiction that we go back to it for to reaffirm our core values.
yeah.
And they're the core values of our civilization. I think it's how we transmit them. Really, from
Hmm.
one I think it's the storytelling that transmits the values, not military school or what.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know what I mean, it's like
Yeah.
it's we go back to the stories for our hero to find out what a hero is supposed to do when the chips are down.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that kind of segues into it's one of the things that I like to dive into on this show is finding the story's undercurrent with the author. It's that second beating heart of the story,
Yeah.
and it tends to flow beneath the lover's journey. What undercurrent is flowing beneath Leona and Oliver's story, do you think?
Trust,
Okay.
issues of trust. I've come back to trust and characters in the process of reinventing themselves. Those are the two. If you look back to the very start of my books, my writing career, those two elements are there, and I
Yeah.
going back to them for the emotional power of the story, because those are two things that just fascinate me. I think we all have to reinvent ourselves, and we do it every day, and
Mm.
we don't give ourselves enough credit for it.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
I survived. Um,
Yeah.
but I also think that trust is the risk we take every day, and there's no avoiding it, and it's a huge risk for
Hmm.
everything from stepping off the sidewalk to go into the crosswalk to trusting the repairman who just showed up at your house. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a huge issue, and then it becomes really intense in a relationship.
Hmm.
Um, and those are the issues that I like to explore.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
I think
Well,
I think every author has core issues that they go back to again and again. Um,
yeah. Yeah, I've
you
heard you
called it,
talk
you were
about,
right. You were right. You called it the beating heart underneath it. That
yeah,
nailed it. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
yeah, 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 you bet. Well, just to switch gears just a little bit here, I always ask authors about tropes that might appear in their story, because our romance readers love their tropes. Can you think of two or three that appear in this story?
Well, the forced proximity,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
two people having to work together to survive, and they really are the only two that have each other's backs.
Yeah.
Um, but they don't know how it's going to end for them. They know how they learn they can trust each other up to a point, but what happens after that becomes the mystery for their relationship.
Right.
Um, the cult, I think the cult, the cult mystery is always serves its own trope. Um,
Yeah.
and I think just an underlying sense of it's not a trope, but I think romance in general in my books definitely are fundamentally optimistic in nature, and I think
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons for the popularity. Um, y- you want to feel good at the end of the book. You want to feel positive. You want to feel optimistic, not just because the two people got together, because justice got done, or you had a good adventure. But there's something deeper going on there, and I think the genre is the prime example if for readers who want that feeling, that mood of just feeling optimistic and positive about life in general. I think
Hmm.
this does that for us.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. Do you think that that this would have like a enemies to lovers? I feel like it's not quite that. It
Not
doesn't
quite
quite
enemies,
go that far. Yeah.
rivals.
Rivals. Okay.
Rivals.
Yeah, that would work, I think, better. Yeah. I was struggling with that one. I'm like, I don't think they were really enemies, but they were very leery of each other for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
have
yeah,
you Go ahead.
no, that's a good way of putting it. The rivals, I think.
Yeah. Have you read a book recently that you've really enjoyed that you wouldn't mind sharing or recommending?
Yeah. Glad you asked. It's coming out actually, I think next week or the week of the 24th. This is Christina Dodd's Thus With a
Oh,
Kiss I Die. And this is the daughter of Romeo and Juliet. And she
all
is
right.
she is a
Nice.
sleuth in Renaissance Verona.
Oh,
And and Romeo and Juliet are still alive, and so are seven other brothers and sisters. And Juliet is become a sleuth, and there's a very cool romance involved with
yeah.
the head of the guy in charge of Verona, whatever the title is, that Dukes or whatever they are. I forget what the title is,
Yeah.
but Prince. Anyhow, this is Thus With a Kiss I Die by Christina Dodd, and like I said, it's the daughter of Romeo and Juliet, and it's very funny, and it's a very clever kind of mystery. It's a
Okay.
Yeah, it's a mystery. Yeah, there's Thus With a Kiss I Die. Somebody croaked.
That's great. I always like to add the recommendations in the show notes, so I
Yeah,
appreciate
this
that.
one comes
Thank you.
out next week, or you can pre-order it now. It's going to be here within 10 days or so. So
All right. Wonderful.
yeah,
Wonderful.
I don't know, when does this air? Maybe it's out when the
This will air, let me look here real quick. This will air on June 23rd. So,
hey the book will
it'll
be
be
out then.
out. It'll be out and about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. 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 Well, you have been writing for quite a long time, and I always like to ask authors who have been at it for a while if they have any tips for starting out authors as far as how to keep themselves healthy. Is there any routine that you do, anything that you have found that, keeps the carpal tunnel away, keeps the back problems away, just whatever, comes to mind?
Yeah, I've had an exercise program of one kind or another since, and I'm not a lover of exercise, so this is a true this is
Yeah.
a chore as far as I'm concerned. Um, but I think you need to work the exercise into your life on a regular basis because this is a sit down a lot job, and as we know, they take a there's a penalty. Um,
Yeah.
I do have a lot of friends who take their right on the computer and then move the computer around a lot just to get different chairs or different
Yeah.
locations or physical
Hmm.
locations. But I think it is important to have that kind of, it doesn't have to be a super strenuous thing, just something you make yourself do several times a week. Uh,
Yeah.
Currently I'm
Okay.
doing Pilates, but in the past I've done aerobics, whatever takes your
Yeah.
fancy.
Yeah, I love Pilates. I've gotten away from it, but I used to do it a lot, and yeah, it's great. It's
It's
great.
good because you can modify it to whatever you need to modify it to.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not going to
very
hurt.
targeted.
Yeah, you won't hurt yourself if you're, yeah. So,
Yeah, great.
so the exercise would be a big one.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Well, before we go, can you give us a hint of what's coming up next?
Oh, yes. The next book out will be in January, and it's called The Shop on Hidden Lane. And this
Nice.
is one of my Jayne Ann Krentz romantic suspense novels, again with a psychic twist. And I'm probably shooting myself in the foot by doing this, but I put a dog in it. Yeah, a dog with a bit of a psychic vibe. So that may have been my. I didn't learn my lesson from dust bunnies. I
Oh, that's so
had to try
funny.
it here on Earth too. We'll see what happens.
All right,
Yeah, the
great.
shop
Well,
on Hidden Lane under my Krentz name in January.
all right, great. We'll keep an eye out for it. Well, folks, as you've already heard, the book is out. It's a New York Times bestseller. Go
Hmm?
grab it. You're going to love the bunnies. They have a dark side. I love it though. Um, you can check out Jayne's website at janeannkrentz.com. You'll find her entire catalog there, including her Jayne Castle and Amanda Quick books. Jayne, what social media platform are you most active on?
Probably Facebook and Instagram. Those are about the only two. I kind of suck at social media, to be
And do you have the same handle on
honest.
each one?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah, just
yeah.
Jayne Ann Krentz, Jane with a Y. Yeah. No,
Okay.
I took a class in the TikTok, how to use TikTok, and I failed. So,
I have not ventured to TikTok yet either, so I'm right there with you. All right. Well, Jayne, thanks so much for joining me. I I really loved living in your harmony world, and
oh,
I will be back. And thanks for chatting with me about It Takes a Psychic. It's a
my
great
pleasure,
story.
and thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. Well, many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Undercurrents of Romance. You can find more information about the show at traceydevlyn.com/podcast. Undercurrents of Romance is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'll be back soon with another great romantic read. In the meantime, enjoy the adventure, everyone.